That's what life is really all about, is noticing what is happening right here, right now. And when we have so much distracting us, and my God, we have so much distracting us, how can we slow down enough to focus on what actually really matters? What do we actually use? What's bettering our life? And what is distracting us and taking away from our life? What is zapping our joy? Get rid of the things that are zapping your joy or not adding value to your life. Let go of what you do not need to make room for what you want. Spearmint tea. Great for stress. Okay, stress and burnout. Let's talk about that. And I'm going to share with you how I came to realize I was on the verge of burnout. Now, this is coming from a practitioner who specializes in stress, anxiety, and trauma. I've been a holistic healer, coach, and therapist for over 20 years. And this year, 2024, has been quite the challenge. And it's allowed me, or shall I say, it's invited me to slow down enough to recognize I myself have so much on my plate that's been heavy and weighing me down. So the top 3 things that I recognize within myself that made me a lot more aware of potential burnout. The first thing is noticing how exhausted I've been. Now, I'm the kind of person who sleeps pretty well, actually, and I tend to prioritize sleep most of the time. 8 to 9 hours of sleep generally is what I will aim for. But even when I was getting, 8.5 or 9 hours of sleep at night, I would still be really tired, exhausted throughout the day. My energy level was low. My training was also being impacted. So my strength training, which I've been doing barbell strength training for the last 5 years or so, despite my efforts, I was actually losing a lot of strength instead of gaining strength like I was in the past. So just feeling just super tired and fatigued. That was the first sign. So despite having adequate sleep and rest, I was still feeling really, really tired. And it was impacting my training as well. The second thing that I noticed is being very highly irritable. Extremely irritable. And just being really impatient with a lot of people and society in general. I've actually been known as being like one of the most patient people, at least amongst my peers. And working in the counseling field for a number of years, a lot of my colleagues would be like, oh, let's, send this tough one to Lori. She's very patient and she's very calm. And I have not been patient and calm recently. And so that was another telling sign that, wow, I am really not feeling great. And so the third thing that I noticed is, and this was actually very telling, I became very apathetic. So I was noticing that I had this attitude of like, who cares? And that's not like me. I tend to be very empathetic, sympathetic, compassionate. I'm very highly sensitive. If you've ever heard of the term HSP, highly sensitive person, that's me. I'm very highly sensitive. I'm sensitive to noises and bright lights, especially fluorescent lighting, fragrances. The positive side of being highly sensitive is I'm highly intuitive, and it makes a great, there's a lot of great qualities that I possess that make me a really excellent healer, like holding really safe space for people. And, I can almost finish my client's sentence when they're trying to describe something that's really painful. I can almost, finish their sentence for them. And I'm like, yes, it's exactly how I feel. And so there's a lot of positives to being highly sensitive. But when you are a highly sensitive person and suddenly become desensitized to things, where you start losing your compassion and your empathy, and you just kind of, for me personally, I was becoming almost numb, but in a kind of a jaded way. And so that was very telling as well. I was like, I am not feeling myself. So I had to take a step back and be like, okay, how would I advise my client who is experiencing these same types of symptoms? Number one, I would encourage them to have compassion on themselves. Number two, I would have them take a personal inventory of what actually is on their plate. And so when I did that for myself, I was like, wow, actually there are these things that have been weighing on my heart, especially my heart and my mind, my spirit, and in turn my body, that I think at first glance, I was just like, oh, well, yeah, this is a stressor, but not really taking into consideration how heavy that stressor really was. And when I paused to really look at things and be like, wow, Lori, have some compassion on yourself. You really actually are carrying a lot right now. So what is it that you need right now? So I hope that some of these things that I share with you will spark some perhaps intuitive or some insights for you personally on what you can do if you're noticing that you're nearing burnout, or just if you're experiencing stress. We all experience stress, and sometimes we have chapters and seasons that are more stressful in our lives than others. And for me, I'm in that chapter right now. I am in that chapter. There's waves, there's ebbs and flows, and I'm in that chapter of heavier stress. And so I hope that some of these things that I share with you might inspire you to do some things that are going to be nurturing for you and create more bandwidth and more space to allow more compassion and peace of mind and peace in your heart. So the first thing that I did was, like I said, slow down enough to acknowledge. I think a lot of times, for a lot of us, we hurry through life, and for me personally, I'll share this, and I think some of you can relate to this as well. I'm very good at helping other people have compassion for themselves, inspiring them to do that, but I wasn't giving myself that same amount of space to have compassion on myself. So number one, acknowledge what's on your plate. Acknowledge, perhaps the heaviness that you're carrying, the worries that are weighing you down, the tension that you're feeling in your shoulders or your jaw, or, even just some of the somatic things that you're feeling in your body that are communicating to you that you have a lot going on. So that's the first thing, acknowledge. The second thing that I did is, this might be kind of an attribute, especially for highly sensitive people, but decluttering. I noticed that clutter in my environment drives me crazy. Now, more so, I think when our nervous systems, when our bandwidth is decreased, our nervous system becomes more highly attuned to things that are bothersome in our environment. And so if clutter tends to bother me in general, it's going to be heightened when I'm under stress. So if you're noticing that for yourself and you're just kind of feeling this urge to purge, that's probably, one of the factors that may be playing a part in that. And so what I noticed in myself is my closet, for example. I started with my closet. I was like, this is ridiculous that I have to, push things out of the way to try to reach a shirt or a blouse or a sweater. And I can't find this and I can't find that. And oh my gosh, I didn't know I had these jeans because they were hidden way back in the closet. Anyway, it was really starting to bother me. And so I purged my closet. I did one round of purging and I got rid of about 3 or 4 garbage bags full of, a big bag of, sorry, I have hair in my eye. Big garbage bag full of clothes from my closet and shoes and things like that. So I donated those, and the following weekend I did another purge and I came up with maybe 1 or 2 more garbage bags full of stuff. In the following weekend, I picked out a few other items and then it turned into maybe 10 more items. And so that's been really feeling good to have a lot more empty hangers in my closet and just a lot more space of noticing, what are the things that I actually use and the things that I love. Our attention tends to be drawn. We can see things more clearly when there's not a bunch of stuff cluttering up what we actually love. And I think that's the same, and it's true for a lot of things in our life. When we have a lot of things cluttering up our life because we have so many things going on, it's actually taking away from the most important things, I think. And so that's just kind of I think an internal thing that gets externalized when we decrease clutter in our environment, and vice versa. When we start to decrease clutter in our environment, it starts to have a synergistic positive impact on our mind. It starts to clear our mind and create more peace and spaciousness. So I did that, purging, decluttering. I also went through some things in my kitchen. I was noticing that here's where, part of the irritability was coming in is I would notice myself getting irritable when I would go to put like a spatula away, for example. We have these big, almost like like a jar, I guess you could say, a couple of different jars full of different ladles and spatulas and things like that. And I couldn't fit it in there because there were so many of them. And so I just took all of them out. I did an inventory. We had 8 spatulas. Who needs 8 spatulas? So my husband and I just went through, all of the things that we had so many duplicates of so many things that we didn't need that many. Like we had 3 metal meat tenderizers. 3. Why do we have 3? I only need 1. So anyway, I decluttered a lot of things in the kitchen as well, and the spice rack, that was actually probably the highlight of my decluttering in my kitchen. I don't know what your spice rack looks like or how you feel when you go to look for different seasonings. Every time I'd open up our cupboard that has all of our spices, it just gave me anxiety. And I would just feel this, I would have this visceral response of just irritation and frustration. And I'm trying to reduce the irritation and frustration. And so what I decided to do is get into solution mode as I'm decluttering. I was looking at things like what are some small changes that I can make that will create more cohesiveness and more bandwidth and just a feeling of lightness. And so the spice rack has been bothering me for quite a while. So I decided, okay, it's time to invest in a spice rack that has different levels so I can actually see everything. And I purchased a set of glassware that were all the same size. All of the labels match. They're all, individually labeled with the different spices. I put them all in alphabetical order. So I did take the time to take out all of my spices and, put them in the new jars. That did take a little bit of time, but it felt so good because now I open up the cover and I just feel ease. I feel ease and I just feel really good about it. So it's those simple things that I'm doing. I'm slowing down enough to look at these small little projects that take just a little bit of time a little bit of time, but the return on that little bit of time creates so much more. The return on my investment, it just creates so much more spaciousness. And so, thinking of what are some things in your life or your environment where you can create some more spaciousness. Maybe it's you have way too many pillows on your bed. Can I just clear some of the pillows off my bed? It could be something really simple, or your vehicle. When you get in your vehicle, does it create anxiety? Is there too much stuff? Is there something that you can do to organize it that just gives you a bit more peace of mind? So noticing your environment and decluttering. So that was the first thing was acknowledging all the stress that was on my plate, like really looking at things closely with a compassionate eye and heart. The second thing was decluttering my space. And that's a work in progress. There are so many other things that I want to declutter in my home, but I'm off to a good start. And like I said, it just feels so good. So that's the second thing. The third thing I would say is slowing down. And what do I mean? What do I mean by that? I think, I've actually been watching a lot of slow living YouTube videos. I'm very drawn to that lifestyle. I wouldn't say that I've actually taken that on fully yet, but I will say that I am moving in that direction of so-called slow living. Here are just a couple of simple things that I have done to incorporate more of the slow living. One of them is taking just 5 minutes in the mornings to savor a cup of coffee or a cup of tea. So this tea that I'm drinking right now, it smells so good. Fresh spearmint leaves, just chopped up and infused for about 5 minutes or so, savoring things, slowing down enough to just notice the smell, the taste, the texture, the temperature, using your senses to really notice things in your environment. So the other thing that I do in the mornings, what I'll often do is just notice the beautiful morning light and how that looks as it's coming through the window. What does that look like on my houseplants? What does it look like as it's, casting light on my dog and he's just, comfortably napping in front of the sun, or looking outside through the window and just seeing how the light is reflecting so beautifully on the leaves and the trees and the flowers. Again, just noticing, slowing down enough to notice what's happening around you and even inside of you. Noticing, like right now, if I'm really mindful of what's happening in my body, I feel some tension right here in my shoulders and my neck. So I think there's a lot of things that are constantly communicating to us, but are we listening? And if we do simple things like that, like noticing the smell, and the taste of the spearmint tea, it's beginning to condition me to slow down enough to be more present. That's what life is really all about, is noticing what is happening right here, right now. And when we have so much distracting us, and my God, we have so much distracting us. I literally went through my phone a few weeks ago and I deleted 20 apps. 20 apps that I never use. They're just cluttering on my phone, just taking up space, things like that. There's so many things that are constantly distracting us. How can we slow down enough to focus on what actually really matters? What do we actually use? What's bettering our life? And what is distracting us and taking away from our life? What is zapping our joy? Get rid of the things that are zapping your joy or not adding value to your life. All of those things in my closet, they were not adding value to my life. Maybe at one time in my life they were. This chapter, no, it's not. So it's time for it to go. Let go of what you do not need to make room for what you want. That's a beautiful mantra. Let go of what you do not need to make room for what you want. So acknowledging what's on your plate, decluttering. The third thing is slowing down. The other thing that I do in terms of taking some actionable, intentional steps to slow down is I really love making sourdough bread. Now, I know that's not for everyone. Maybe some of you out there are, you love making sourdough bread as well. I think what I love about making sourdough bread the most is the fact that it cannot be done effectively in a hurry. You simply cannot produce a beautiful loaf of bread in a hurry. I love that it forces me, it requires me to slow down, to notice what I'm doing during every step of the process, and to be able to savor and enjoy something that took longer than a few seconds. Definitely longer than a few seconds. It took generally a couple days or so of this process from start to finish. And I just love that because I think our world has shifted and accelerated at such a dramatic rate where so many people's levels of anxiety is really greatly contributed to that factor of everything is hurry, 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 and we have so much coming at us. So baking sourdough bread for me is something that is such a beautiful way of slowing down and then enjoying the result. You get to eat some great homemade bread. So I love that. The other thing that I've done in terms of slowing down is making a beautiful, nourishing meal. Beautiful. Making a really delicious, nourishing meal. I really enjoy cooking and baking. And it's funny because my husband noticed that I've been kind of perking up and like really my creative juices have been flowing a lot more about, I want to make this, or I want to create this, I want to bake this. And a big part of that is because my kitchen is more cohesive. I feel better about the spice rack. I can find my spices now. I can find what I need to prepare something beautiful. And so I feel so much more spaciousness and even my creative energy flowing when there's less clutter in my home. So slowing down enough to make a nice meal is something also that I've been prioritizing. And I may not do that every single day of the week, but if I can do it, even if it's just, once a week, if you're living off of fast food, for example, start where you're at and take a baby step. Pick one night a week and create for yourself a nourishing meal that just feeds your cells just beautiful, nourishing nutrients. So that's another thing that I've been doing as I've been slowing down is taking more time to make home cooked meals. Now, one of the things I was noticing that's standing in the way of some of these things that I want to create more of in my life, whether it's decluttering or, making more nourishing meals, things like that. There's only so many hours in the day, right? We all have the same amount of time. I've also made the decision to reduce the number of hours that I work per week so that I can create more space for the things that are filling me back up. The more that I am filled up, the more I can impart that into my clients. The space that I hold for my clients is deeply sacred. I do not take that for granted. I feel like it's an absolute honor to hold the space that I do for my clients to truly transform and really shift some deeply painful burdens in their life and transform them. I love what I do for my clients. And however, if I do that 40 hours a week, for example, which is the typical work week, American work week, 40 hours, well, even that it's like, well, maybe 50 or 60 hours per week, which is just absurd. Anyway, if I were to do that at that rate, with that intensity, sometimes, not always, not all my clients are, dealing with really intense things, but that is also a recipe for burnout. And so if any of you guys out there are healers of any kind, whether you're licensed or non-licensed, any kind of healer, you're holding space for people's healing and growth, you know that there's a capacity for you as a healer as well. And so I think one of the best things that I can do, not only for myself, there's a synergistic impact that I have when I take the time to nourish myself more, create more bandwidth for myself. Now I'm more grounded, I'm more present, I'm more attuned with my clients. Now they're getting the best version of me as well. It's a win-win for everybody. So those are some of the things I've been prioritizing as I've been noticing being on the verge of burnout. And so the last thing that I will say that has been really, really helpful for me, and this has been true for me since I was a little girl. This is something that, this is actually one of my core values. One of my core values has always been nature. Being out in nature. The solitude and the peace and the presence and the beauty of nature. There's a natural healing element in nature. Despite the season, it doesn't matter what season it is, there are so many amazing healing elements that nature does for us just organically, just naturally. Being amidst the trees and feeling grass on your bare feet or picking some beautiful flowers. All of those things just bring so much peace and solitude to me personally. I know for a lot of other people too, and I think it's something that our society, generally speaking, is really lacking. Our children are not playing out in the woods like they were when I was young. And, most of us of all ages are often behind screens, for work or for pleasure or whatever. And there's not enough being out in nature. And we are a part of that. Nature is a part of us. There's something so sacred, I think, about being out in nature and so therapeutic. And every single time I'm having a hard time, a hard day, there's heaviness in my heart and my mind, I feel better. Not necessarily excellent, not always excellent, sometimes, but not always excellent. But after I walk out in nature, I feel better. I feel better. Some of the most amazing innovators in history, they knew the power of nature, and they would walk out in nature. If they ever got stuck or if they wanted their imagination to thrive, they would take a walk out in nature. And guess what happens? Your imagination begins to light up. Creative downloads and insights start to come to you organically. There's so many healing benefits of nature. I could create probably 50 more YouTube videos just on that alone. I'm so drawn to nature, doing nature photography, just being out in nature. So if you can go for a walk, just going for a daily walk can also just help shift your mood. So if you live in an urban environment, bringing some plants into your home or some freshly cut flowers or things that are natural, that can be very calming, very healing, very therapeutic. Perhaps, diffusing some aromatherapy such as eucalyptus or lemon or, whichever, wild orange, whatever, calls to you. There's so many healing elements of nature that we can surround ourselves with that's going to be therapeutic to you. So I hope this has been helpful. I'm kind of curious to hear what what you've noticed in terms of symptoms of burnout, and what are some of the things that you've done to cultivate more spaciousness, more peace in your heart, in your mind, and your body. So please share below, and thanks for tuning in, and I look forward to talking with you in the next video.